Enroll your child for the manifested e-learning platform and see their grades grow tremendously. These videos can be downloaded to a laptop for offline viewing or viewed from a smartphone in a cost-friendly format.
Hello learners, welcome to our today's geography lesson. This lesson is a continuation of the lessons we've been having under the topic hydrological cycle. In our today's lesson, learners, we are going to discuss the storage process. We've so far seen how the hydrological cycle works, and we defined hydrological cycle as the endless movement of water from the atmosphere to the surface of the earth and back to the atmosphere again through the process of evaporation. Then water comes back again in form of rainfall. And we went through all the processes that take place in the hydrological cycle, and we summed up the hydrological cycle as a continuous link of condensation, precipitation, infiltration, overland flows, and evaporations. Today, learners, we want to study the storage process. Once water is on the Earth's surface, it may be stored in many forms. In our today's lesson, we are going to consider these forms. Learners, welcome to our today's geography lesson. Geography. The storage, water storage, this, let me just call it storage process. Storage process. Storage process. Now, learners, you can confirm that geography is a very interesting subject because we are trying to answer questions that were initially difficult, like where does water come from? Where does it go? How come the source of water never dries up? For example, we have rivers that always flow without drying up, okay? People are born finding the rivers, they die leaving the rivers flowing. The lakes never dry up. The oceans are always filled up. It always rains, learners, always rains. The skies never dry up. By now, learners, you must have gotten the answer to the question. It's because of the hydrological cycle. Hydrological cycle. The endless movement of water from the atmosphere to the Earth's surface and back to the atmosphere again through continuous link of processes like condensation, precipitation, infiltration, overland flows, and evaporations. It is a cycle, hydrological cycle, also known as water cycle. So learners, once this water is on the Earth's surface, it may be stored in many forms. Once water is on the Earth's surface, once water is on the Earth's surface, it may be stored in many forms. It may be stored in many forms, namely, we are going to name these forms. Number one is surface water storage. The first one is surface water storage. This is one form, surface water storage. Surface water storage. This is water that is on the surface of the earth. Surface of the earth. Learners, although some rainfall directly finds its way into the ground, learners. Rain, we are talking about some rainfall. Some of it directly finds itself in rivers, in lakes and so on, learners. Most water learners reaches rivers by combination of process such as the surface water, what we call the surface runoff. Surface runoff. There is that water that drops directly as rain from the skies to the rivers. But most of the water that finds itself in the rivers is through the process we explained in our first lesson as the surface runoff. This is water that runs on the surface of the earth. When it rains, when it rains on the ground, learners, and you must have seen this water. After it rains, you can check outside. There is this water that runs on the surface of the earth after raining. Okay? Now, once the water is in the river, that water flows into the rivers. Okay? And after it gets into the rivers, that water flows through the process of gravitation. It flows down into the lakes and also into the oceans and swamps. Most rivers find their way into lakes, into oceans, and into swamps. So that is surface water storage. Surface water storage is water that is stored in rivers, in oceans, in lakes, and also in swamps, in streams, in tributaries, in any water that you find on the surface of the earth. There is another one, though it's always small, that we call in our language Madavaria. Okay? Madavaria. That is water that is just stagnant. You may find it along the roads and so on. But that forms a very small fraction. So that is surface water storage. I've said this is water that is in form of oceans, stored in form of rivers, lakes, streams, oceans, dams, etc. Rivers, lakes, streams, oceans, dams, swamps, etc. Then the second storage is known as groundwater storage. Groundwater storage. Groundwater what? Groundwater storage. Now, this is the water that collects above an impermeable rock. This is the water that collects above an impermeable rock. This is a rock that water cannot penetrate through. An impermeable rock. Or it is the water that fills all the pore spaces in rocks, or water that fills all the pores, all the pore spaces, all the pore spaces in the earth. So this water is either on top of impermeable rocks, or is water that seeps in between rock spaces, okay, creating a zone of saturation that finally creates a zone of saturation. Learners, this water reaches the underground layers through the process we saw earlier on, the process of percolation and infiltration processes. It permeates, okay? It percolates, it infiltrates through rocks, all right? And it is this through process of percolation and inflation after water has filled the pores in between the rocks that we find what we call the waterbed. This water gives us the, it forms the water base or the water table. It is a zone that forms the water table. It is the zone that forms the water table. So this is another storage, learners. Storage number 2, groundwater storage. First, we've mentioned the surface water storage. When water is on the Earth's surface, it may be stored in many forms. One is surface water storage. This is water that is found on the roads, on streams, in lakes, in dams, in swamps, in oceans, and so on. Then there is a groundwater storage. There is now this water that collects above an impermeable rock. Remember, in the hydrological cycle, there is this water after hitting the ground. When water after the precipitation process, when that water hits the ground in form of rain, in form of hail, learners, that water may either run off the surface or it can infiltrate. So there is that water that runs on surface, and there is that water that infiltrates the earth surface. When it infiltrates the earth surface, learners have said that the water finds itself in the ground, okay? In the ground. It fills the pore spaces in rocks, creating a zone of saturation. And there's water that, again, it collects above an impermeable rock. So there are two things, an impermeable rock or fills all the pore spaces in the earth. Finally, that water gives us the water table, the water table. Then the third storage, learners, is the what we call the xyrosphere. Number 3, xyrosphere. This is another storage. Xyrosphere. This line is supposed to be straight. Let me make it straight. It's a straight line. So learners, xyrosphere. Xyrosphere. Learners, the word xyro is derived from the Greek word krios, which means cold. Krios. Krios. The Greek word krios, which means cold. So therefore, cryosphere simply means the cold sphere. Cold sphere. And this is an important storage of fresh water. It is the frozen water part of the Earth's system. Xyrosphere is the frozen water part of the Earth's system. Frozen water, we are referring to ice. We are referring to the glaciers, learners, right? And water can be stored in form of ice, can be in form of, ice is just frozen water, glaciers and all that. And this water, learners, is stored in the vast ice-covered regions of the world. Now, water enters this storage through snowfall, but sometimes once the ice melts, all this water is released again into the oceans, into the seas, into the lakes, and so on, and other storage channels. So, learners, Cyrosphere, learners, is also one very interesting subject, and the study of cyrosphere is known as the cryology. Cryology is known as cryology. All right, it's known as cryology. Now, the storage of water in this form, in ice form, is very critical, it's very important, because it protects the earth from being too warm. Because we are talking of ice. The storage of water in form of ice and glaciers protects the earth from getting too hot. And again, it's important to note that changes in snow, that is, changes in snow from ice to water, if there are those changes, learners, such changes affects many things. It affects air temperature, it affects the sea levels, it affects the ocean currents, it may also affect storm patterns. So, learners, water that is on the surface of the earth can also be stored in form of ice, in form of glaciers, in form of frozen water. And these are found in regions like the Antarctica, all right, the Antarctica and the Arctica, all right, Antarctica regions. So large amounts of water can be stored in ice. So just to show you some images, learners, want to show you some images of glaciers. You can see glaciers, learners. They can be, we are talking of vast ice covered regions. So those are glaciers. That is ice. Look at it. All right, look at that. Those are vast ice, frozen water. Can you see it, learners? That's what we are talking about. That is what we refer to as the cyrosphere. All right, cold, ice, glaciers, frozen water. So, learners, that will mark the end of our today's lesson, where we have said that once water is stored on the Earth's surface, it may be stored in many forms. We've named the surface water storage, the groundwater storage, and the cyrosphere. Thank you for attending our today's lesson. But before we close the lesson, I'm going to give you practice questions. These are revision. 3 questions, learners. Number 1, what factors influence surface runoff or overland flow? Number 2, in what ways can we sustain the hydrological cycle? 3, name and explain 3 forms in which water is stored while on the face of the earth, while on the earth's surface. Thank you for attending our today's lesson, learners. I hope to see you in our next lesson where we learn more about geography. And as we continue studying geography, learners, you can appreciate that geography is a very exciting subject, a very interesting subject. The things that we are studying are things that we can see, the things that are on the earth, and learners, the earth is our home. So it's important for us to know our home, right? This is where we live. It is on this earth that we get our food. It is on this earth that we build our shelter, our habitation, learners. Everything that we have comes from the ground. These pens came from the ground. This suit just from the soil. Learners, the tables, the televisions, the guitars, the motor vehicles, the mobile phone, all of them, learners, are just from the ground, from the earth. So the earth is a very critical resource, learners, the earth. So it's important for us to appreciate the earth through the study of geography. So I encourage you to continue developing interest in geography, not just for exam purposes, but so that you can learn the environment within which we live. Because learners, we are talking about the hydrological cycle. We are talking about things like the soil. We are talking about the mountains, the lakes. These are our environment, learners, and the animals, human activities, right? The climate, learners. These are things that directly affect us as human beings on the face of the earth. So the more knowledge we get about the earth, the study of the earth, the more we will enjoy the stay on earth, because earth is our home. Hello? Hello, learners? Am I making a point? Yes, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. Below this video, there is a comment section where you can post your questions and all your questions will be answered. For now, I just say bye-bye.
Thank you for choosing to study with us. For more information, you can call us on 0724 173845.